This morning, as you've all heard the phrase before, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And as we were travelling up in the car this morning, we had to go and pick up Abby, Rose and Adam, and we were having a bit of a chat about what they had for breakfast. And they had to admit that it wasn't very much, because that's kind of the standard, isn't it, for young people today? But that phrase, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It's the one that we enjoy. And I thought I would do a little quiz this morning to see what our breakfast preferences are here in the church. So we're going to do a little game of this or that, and it's a breakfast special. So the first one, cereal or toast? Who would rather have cereal for breakfast? Okay, who would rather have toast? It's kind of tight to call, but I'm going to say toast is what the majority of people would prefer. Okay, maybe you don't like cereal or toast, maybe it's porridge or Weetabix. There's a few people already shaking their heads in disgust. Okay, what about porridge? Love the way that all the kids have their hands up for porridge. Weetabix. It's the older folk going for Weetabix, okay, it's interesting. With my breakfast in the morning, okay, so I think I've eaten the same breakfast since I was about like 15, which is a bowl of Cheerios, a banana, glass of fruit juice, cup of coffee. So with my fruit juice, it's the only thing that changes. So apple or orange? Who would rather have apple? Put your hands up, let's see. Orange? Okay, majority is orange. That one was easy at least. Now this one, with the older people, if you're under the age of 15, probably not so much, but tea or coffee? Who would rather have tea with their breakfast? Of course, in Glenbap, everyone has to have tea. Coffee? There's a few of us, that's alright. Okay, our next one then, whenever you're getting a fry, most important decision, soda bread, potato bread? Both. Of course. Okay, but let's imagine you have to pick one. So who would go for potato bread? Who would go for soda bread? It's kind of 50-50 again. Okay, this last one, so I've got three options here. And if someone says poached, well, you're just awkward. So, boiled egg, scrambled egg, fried egg, okay? So boiled egg, there's a few. Scrambled egg, slightly more. Fried egg, even more again, okay? So everyone's choosing fried egg. But for all of us, we have different preferences when it comes to our breakfast and what we want to eat. And for most of us, probably, whenever it's a Monday to Friday, we probably do have the same breakfast every day, and then maybe at the weekend, we get a big dirty fry and we enjoy ourselves. But I wonder, what do you talk about when you have breakfast? What did you talk about this morning? Maybe you talked about the weather. Maybe you talked about what's taken place in the past week. Maybe you talked about going to church today. Or maybe there was just complete silence because it's too early in the morning, and let's be honest, who wants to engage with their family first thing? But for all of us, the conversations that we have at breakfast are sometimes the things that we forget. But yet it's maybe the first conversation that we have in a day. And whenever Jesus was here on earth, he, as you can probably tell where I'm going with this, he made his disciples breakfast after rising again. Last week we thought about Jesus' crucifixion and that it is finished. And then we thought about the resurrection. But just before Jesus was crucified, as you remember, Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And that was kind of the last encounter that Peter had with Jesus. He had let Jesus down, and he knew that he had done wrong. But as we know, Jesus was going to forgive Peter. And I want you just to watch this short video, and then I have one point that I want to make.
Some of Jesus' followers were together when Peter said, "I am going fishing." So they all went out to the sea, but caught nothing all night. At dawn, they saw a man standing on the beach. The man called out to them and said, "Have you caught any fish?" "No." The man said, "Throw out your net on the right side and you'll get some." So they did, and they couldn't Jesus said, "Come have some breakfast." While they were eating, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter said, "Yes, you know I love you." So Jesus said, "Then feed my lambs." Then Jesus asked again, "Do you love me?" Peter said again, "Yes, you know I love you." And Jesus said, "Then take care of my sheep." And then a third time, Jesus asked Peter, "Do you love me?" Peter was hurt that Jesus asked the question a third time. So he said, "You know everything. You know that I love you." So Jesus said one last time, "Then feed my sheep." And so Peter went on to feed Jesus' sheep by helping establish the church and by writing books that we can now read in the Bible. And though he denied Jesus, he was forgiven, and many came to know the love and forgiveness of Jesus through Peter.
3 times Peter denied Jesus. 3 times Jesus asked Peter this question, "Do you love me?" Let's be honest, if you're like me, you probably do not want to eat fish for breakfast in the morning. But that wasn't the most important thing that took place on the beach. It was the conversation that Jesus had with Peter. And 3 times he asked him this same question, "Do you love me?" I wonder if I asked you that question this morning, do you love Jesus? And you said yes. And then I asked you again, and then I asked you again, you would probably get frustrated and say, "I'm giving you the same answer." And we see that with Peter. But 3 times Jesus gives Peter the instruction to care for his sheep, to feed my lambs. Peter wasn't to go and feed them with actual food or breakfast, but he was to feed them with the word of God. And Jesus, whenever he was here on earth, he said, "Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." You know, it's important that we do eat our breakfast in the morning. It sets us up for the day that lies ahead. But I wonder about our conversations that we have at breakfast. How often does Jesus come up in our conversations? How often do we talk about the love of God when we're sitting around the dinner table, or when we're sitting having lunch, or maybe whenever you go back to school this week and you're sitting with your friends? How often do you talk about Jesus' love? You see, Peter went on to show God's love in many different ways for the people. He told people about the love of God. He showed them the love of God. What about us today? How do we show people the love of God? I wonder, what do we talk about when we have our meals? Is God's love at the centre? Is Jesus the topic of discussion that we want to have and that we want to bring up? Whenever you go to have breakfast tomorrow morning and you're getting ready to go to school or back to college or whatever, and it's a bit rushed and it's a bit hurried, remember this lesson that Jesus taught. And remember this question, do you love me?